Hello, junkies. Here we are with episode 6 of the Nocturnal Throwback podcast novel, the rebroadcast of the original 2007 book, which I podcast as I wrote it. This week, junkies, oh, hell yes, he's finally back. Mr. Biznass, a character that is an all-time fave among the junkies. And if you haven't heard him, you will soon understand why he is a favorite when you do. Your FDO is sick as a dog this week. Probably not the coronavirus. Probably. I can't say for sure. I was licking the faces of people at airports. So, I can't promise you it's not the coronavirus. I hope you are taking all the necessary rational precautions for this outbreak. But hey, the flu kills way more people though. Yes, it does. But that is small comfort to the people pushing up daisies who got the coronavirus and not the flu. We here at Empty Set Entertainment, we love you. We here at Empty Set Entertainment, we don't want you to croak or even barf for that matter. And trust me, this week, I have barfed enough for all of us. Wash your hands. Don't touch your face. Make sure you're paying attention to actual doctors and scientists. You know, the people who actually understand biology and contagion. Here comes the talkie talk and other such from 2007. Then we're going to hear the foul mouth of Mr. Biznass. Satan, leave this house! Welcome to the Patio Book Nocturnal, episode number 6. Nocturnal is a podcast-only novel you can't buy in stores and you can't peek at the end. Written and performed by Scott Sigler. More information and more free stories at scottsigler.com. This book contains adult language, mature situations, and lots of violence. So crank up the volume. If you're easily offended, I would turn it off. Hello, all my junkies, and welcome to episode 6. Tiffany Hine and Stuart Hood, the most recent junkies to win the Scott Sigler Wants to Kill You contest. You will hear their names in this episode. And at the end of the episode, we'll talk about all the people who missed their chance to be in this episode, to have their name in this episode, because they didn't fill out their profile correctly and they didn't upload their picture. Silly junkies. Also, at the end of this episode, we'll be talking about the book tour that Crown Publishing is going to put me on, a very small book tour come April. But part of that is the new contest where you can drag me, the walking cadaver, me, your dark overlord, the future ruler of the friggin' earth, to your town where we can come do a book reading and a pub crawl and hopefully get somebody else to pay for all the beer. So if you haven't seen that yet, you've got to go to scottsigler.com, vote for your town. We'll get into that more, but ladies and gentlemen, first of all, let's get into the story so far.
Hello, junkies. My name is Nathan Lowell. I'm the creator of the Golden Age of the Solar Clipper. You can find my novels, quarter share, half share, and full share today at podiobooks.com. Watch for the latest novel of the Golden Age, South Coast Shaman, coming in December from podiobooks.com. And now, the story so far. Previously on Nocturnal, Rex Doprovdichuk found that his constant tormentor Alex Panos had been brutally murdered the night before. Rex had dreamed of the murder and felt he was somehow responsible for Panos' death. That exciting feeling drove Rex to hurt someone else for the first time in his life as he mugged a bum for a handful of change. San Francisco medical examiner Robyn Hudson isolated DNA from Panos' murderer. She ran genetic fingerprinting on the sample and found indicators of an XXY chromosome. That could mean multiple killers or one killer with Klinefelter syndrome. She prepped a test to find out for sure and let it run overnight. Homicide detective Brian Clauser had dreamed specific details of Panos' death the same night the boy died. In the last episode, another dream mirrored yet another murder. When Brian arrived, the victim had fallen 3 stories but was still alive. Instead of helping the teenager, Brian put his gun to the boy's forehead and would have pulled the trigger had not Pookie Chang, Brian's partner, arrived in time to stop the shooting. The boy died on the scene, presumably from injuries sustained in the fall, and Pookie sent Brian away to cover up the fact that Brian had almost blown the boy's brains all over the alley.
Another dawn, another body. Paul Fisher died in the alley. On the rooftop, they found symbols written in his blood. The same symbols they found with Alex Panos. Sasha said blood splatters were indicative of a knife slash, a big knife, and a big slash. Fisher had lost a lot of blood on the roof, so there was no telling if he would have died even without the 3-story fall. That determination would have to wait for Robyn's assessment. Whether he had jumped or been thrown remained still open for conjecture. Pookie ran the crime scene. Jimmy and Sammy were there, doing their thing. It was preliminary, but Sammy said that Fisher's death probably came from blood loss as opposed to trauma from the fall. That made it possible, unlikely but possible, that Brian could have saved the kid's life if he'd acted faster. Brian was in a daze. He'd walked onto the scene after Pookie and 2 cruisers had already arrived. The uniforms didn't think anything of it. Where there was Pookie, there was Brian. Pookie was the only one who knew Brian had been the first on the scene, and he was going to keep it that way. Pookie sure as fuck all wasn't going to tell anyone about Brian's dreams. And that, he knew, was a mistake. Brian was a suspect in not 1, but 2 brutal murders. The man had dreamed about Alex, and they'd found Alex dead the next morning. Brian dreamed about Fisher, and Pookie found Brian standing over Fisher, putting his gun right against the wounded boy's forehead. And if Pookie hadn't come along, Brian would have definitely shot him. So clear as day, Brian was A, fucked up, and B, the prime suspect in both killings. But that was the logical side of things. The emotional side, that's where things just didn't add up. Pookie had known Brian for 6 years. Brian, the ninja, Clouser, had saved Pookie's life. For that, Ninja got a permanent benefit of the doubt ticket. The man was rock solid through and through. Murder didn't mesh with his personality. And on top of that, Brian had called for backup. Why would he do that if he just wanted to kill Fisher? And why kill Fisher in the first place? And if he wanted to kill those boys, why talk about the dreams at all? The answer might be because he was crazy. And crazy people do crazy things. Pookie spent 50 hours a week with Brian, at least. And before last night, the man clearly didn't know a thing about Panos or Fisher or the boys' company. So there was no known motive, although means and opportunity were definitely there. Pookie knew all of his feelings meant jack shit. He had to find out what was up with his partner's dreams. With the crime scene well in hand, Pookie grabbed Brian by the elbow and led him out of the alley. "Come on, we gotta talkin' right now." He led them out to his Buick. Both men got in, Pookie in the driver's seat. "So talk to me, Brian. How did you know this was going down?" "I took a nap." Brian's voice was low, almost a whisper. He looked down, not at Pookie, not at the window, but down. "I'd been up all night, most of the day before. I needed some sleep before I started digging again, so I took a nap. I saw Fisher, like I was on a roof. I think the roof's at Sacramento and Van Ness. I wasn't just watching him. I was stalking him." "You saw Fisher in your dream?" Brian nodded. "Only it wasn't me that saw him. It wasn't. I was up there on the roof with this other guy." "And what did this other guy look like?" Brian paused. I don't remember." "Knock it the fuck off, Brian. I know when you're lying, so just spit it out." "You'll think I'm crazy." "Dude, not only do I already think you're crazy, I think it's totally possible you aced those kids, so spit it out." Brian looked up at Pookie. He had an emotion Pookie had never seen before on Brian's face. Fear. "You don't really think I killed those boys, do you?" It was a question, not a statement, and it sounded like Brian wasn't even sure himself. Pookie just shrugged. "I'm going to find out. Now, what did the guy look like?" Brian looked down again. He looked like a snake." "What do you mean, shifty? Like those fucking Italians?" "No, like a snake. Like with green skin and a pointy nose." Pookie stared at Brian. Brian didn't stare back. Green skin, pointy nose. Brian nodded. Man, I'd love to see the lineup if we catch this guy. Will number 3 please step forward? No, not the werewolf, the snake man. I'm just telling you what I saw. It was just a dream, man. It's not like I saw a snake man in real life. Okay. So what do you think is going on, Brian? Did you know those boys? No. Had you ever heard of the Boys Company? No. Then how did you know they were gonna die? I already fucking told you it was in a dream. But there have been others in your dreams, right? Brian nodded. Okay, here's what we'll do. We'll get that sketch artist, Chooch Rodriguez, to do drawings of the other people in your dreams. You can't stand Chooch Rodriguez. He's openly gay and you're like the most ridiculous homophobe on the force. This is true. Sure, he bats for the wrong team, but he's also really good with those sketches. Chooch can nail down the peeps in your dreams. Do you think you can remember them? Like I can fucking forget them. A uniformed officer knocked on Pookie's window. Pookie slid the window down. Patrolman Stewart Hood, good to see you. Your mom win that cook-off last month? She took second, but I'll tell her you asked. You tell Sandy she should have won first. She got jobbed. And tell her make me some more of those hazelnut cookies you brought in. Like a little slice of heaven, those things. Hood smiled. I'll tell her. We have a witness, Pooks. Tiffany Hine, 67 years old. Yeah? Pookie got out of the car. That's fantastic. I wouldn't get too excited, Pooks. Why? What did she see? Hood shook his head. You'll have to hear it for yourself, sir. What are you, the fucking Oracle of Delphi? Don't be a jackass. What did she say? Hood started to laugh as he guided Pookie and Brian into a building to the right of the alley. You think this is a funny situation, Patrolman? You think a dead teenager is funny? What, and if I'm sad and morose, he's gonna suddenly spring back to life, Pooks? Asshole. Just tell me what she said. She said she saw a werewolf take the boy. Didn't I already tell you this isn't funny? Not to fuck around? Yeah, you did. And no, I'm not fucking around. That's what she said. A werewolf. She said it looked like that anyway. But he wasn't alone. He had a partner. Hood opened the door into the building. A partner? Brian asked. Yeah, get this. She said it was a guy with a snake face. These crazy old people. Brian and Pookie both stopped cold. Let me get this straight. She said a snake face. That's what she said, sir. Apartment 215. Hood walked away. Looks like you might get your lineup after all, Pooks, Brian said, and they walked inside. Tiffany Hine was 67, but didn't look a day over 66 and a half. Her apartment looked and smelled like the apartment of any old lady, a stale violet smell, and that off-putting combination of baby powder and various lotions that Brian didn't care to know about. Pictures of children covered her walls. Many of the pictures had that bad coloring noticeable in 70s cameras. Her kids. And the rest looked fresh and sharp save for the ones kicked out by laser printers. Her kids' kids. Judging by the number of faces on both sets of pictures, Tiffany's genes were in no danger of extinction. Brian hoped she would be feeble-minded, crazy, at the very least, horribly nearsighted. Tiffany was none of those things. She lived alone, which was always the first checkmark for crazy, but she seemed as sharp as a tack. She had a high, soft voice, frizzly red hair long past a glorious prime, and wore a yellow flowered robe and worn purple slippers. Her eyes were clear and focused, the kind of eyes that could see right through the bullshit of any child, or any grandchild for that matter. Those eyes sported deep laugh lines, but at the moment, they also showed real fear. Pookie sat on the couch with Tiffany. Brian stood by, looking out the living room window into Austin Street below, the street where Fisher had died. So tell me again, ma'am. Just go from the beginning. This is the 4th time I've told this story, young man, and the 2nd time I've told you. How old are you again? I'm 36, ma'am. Well, lay off the sushi, son. The mercury is affecting your memory. Pookie smiled. He was such a sucker for anyone that gave him shit. I'll take that dietary advice into consideration, ma'am.
Tiffany. Call me Tiffany. My mother's still alive in Iowa City, and she's a ma'am.
Okay, Tiffany, if you don't mind, I was kicked in the head by a mule as a small child, and my short-term retention leaves a bit to be desired, so if you could repeat it again. Tiffany smiled. It was a genuine smile, but a bit empty as well. She was trying to use the humor to erase her fear, and it wasn't working.
Fine, but this is the last time, okay?
Pookie nodded.
Well, as you can see, I have one window that looks out on the Van Ness and one that looks out on the alley. I've had this same corner apartment for 25 years. I look out on the street a lot. I like to watch people go by and imagine what their stories are. Especially at night. I don't sleep so well anymore. So I'm looking out the window, and I see this kid in a crimson jacket walking by, walking pretty fast. He stopped and turned into Austin Street, then peeked around the corner and looked up and down Van Ness. It seemed like he thought someone was watching him, or following him, perhaps. Then they dropped down.
Brian stared out the window overlooking the alley, trying to picture Tiffany's story. Across Austin Street, which was little more than an alley, was that same 3-story building where Brian had seen something move just before he'd approached Fisher. They dropped down from where? Tiffany shrugged.
I wasn't looking up. I was looking down. All I know is they dropped down. From the roof, I imagine. They didn't make a sound.
And you got a good look at 'em? She shrugged again.
As good as I could, considering the light in the alley and how fast they came. They dropped down, they took him, and they went up again.
And how did they go up? Fire escape? Tiffany looked at Pookie like he was retarded.
Young man, how many times do you want to hear me say the same thing? You must really suck at interrogation.
Yes, ma'am. I mean, Tiffany. Just answer the questions, please. I know I'm being a pain in the ass, but this is a murder investigation. The word murder seemed to shake Tiffany a bit. She sat up straighter and cleared her throat.
Yes, of course. Well, they just went up. I think they jumped.
Pookie nodded, as if hearing that someone jumping up 3 stories was an everyday occurrence. That's fine. And could you describe the men, please? Tiffany cleared her throat again.
Well, they were big, maybe a foot taller than the boy. They both had these big dirty blankets over their shoulders. One had green skin and a pointy face. He wore a black trench coat and a black baseball hat with the white initials EFF on it. I saw that. The other one had a long face, and it looked like he had hair all over his face. He wore a black tuxedo jacket and black Bermuda shorts. Hairy legs, just like the face.
I see. So that's the one that looked like a werewolf. Tiffany tilted her head and narrowed her eyes.
No, not really. I mean, that's the first thing that popped into my head. But I thought I saw long jaws that didn't line up right. His tongue hung out of his mouth, hung out to the right side. It was very long.
She stopped, all of her humor gone, the fear now totally in control of her face and voice. Tiffany, would you mind if a sketch artist came over? She shook her head no violently and instantly.
As soon as you boys leave, I'm not talking about this again, to anyone, ever. Do you understand me?
Tiffany, this could be helpful to...
I want you to leave now. I've told you the story twice. That's 2 more times than I wanted to. I did my part. Now go.
Pookie started to talk, but stopped. Tiffany was a tiny old woman, but her voice carried the authority of a disciplinarian mother. She didn't take shit from anybody. Pookie stood. Tiffany, thank you very much for your time. We'll be in touch. She walked to the door and held it open.
Don't bother, Detective. I told you. I'm never speaking of this again.
Pookie walked out, Brian right behind him. Tiffany shut the door. So what do you think, Pooks? Do you believe me now?
I've got the testimony of a senile old woman who saw something for 3 seconds, and I've got your dreams. You'd have to be an idiot to believe in this.
She's not senile, and you didn't answer my question.
Yeah, someone please shoot me right in the ass, but I do believe you. I've always been an idiot.
Pookie's cell phone rang. He answered, a one-sided conversation that lasted all of 2 minutes. What's up?
You know how Jay Parlar went missing yesterday? They found those symbols scratched into the pane of the fire escape outside his window.
First Panos, then Fisher, now Parlar. 3 of the 4 Boy Company toughs. What about that last one, Isaac Moses?
Parlar comes home every night, at least until last night when he went missing. Moses, he stays out all the time. Dad's not around, Mom is a crackhead who can't really give specific whereabouts on the boy. So we know Parlar is missing, but we're not sure about Moses. He could just be laying low, which by the look of things is a pretty good idea right now.
Man, we gotta find those boys. Pookie nodded.
There's an APB out for him. Jack Townsend and John Landis are working on it full time. Chief Zoe's orders.
That's 2 murders, 2 possible missing persons, and the same 2 symbols at each scene. Our database turns up nothing on those symbols, but those are the key. How do we find out what they mean? Pookie opened his manila folder and took out the Polaroids of the symbols painted in blood. The first set from Panos, the second set from the roof where Fisher had fallen to his death.
We've got to go talk to Mr. Business.
Are you kidding me? That fortune teller dude?
You don't believe he's got powers?
No.
So you believe in Snake Man and werewolf creatures jumping down from the roof and taking people. You believe that the people in your dreams are being murdered, but you don't believe in a fortune teller.
Okay, you got a point.
Good. I'm glad I can be right about something today.
What about the principal at the high school?
Kyle Solar. I'll talk to him today. You need some sleep.
But what about Chooch and the sketches of my dream people?
The Chooch is probably ass up in the Castro.
Chooch doesn't go ass up, Pooks. He's a top. Pookie shook his head.
That's just way too much information for me, Brian. How about we not discuss Chooch, gays, asses up, or top, or whatever the fuck until I talk to Solar and you get some sleep. You've been awake like forever. Get home and get a few hours. I'll come pick you up at sundown and we'll go see Mr. Business.
Brian nodded. The bottom line was that Pookie believed him. Brian felt an immense wash of relief. Are you sure we can't talk to Mr. Business now and just get this over with?
He's like you. He's nocturnal. He only does his thing at night. You need me to drop you off?
Brian shook his head. Nah, it's like 4 blocks. I'm good. Pookie gave him one solid, manly slap on the shoulder, then turned and strolled back to the crime scene. Brian walked up Van Ness, headed for his apartment. He was so damn tired. He'd be asleep within minutes of getting home. And hopefully, this time, he wouldn't dream.
What the fuck is that?
Robyn Hudson had awoken that morning after a whopping 3 hours of sleep, walked Emma next door for a playdate with Big Gay Max and his dog Billabub, grabbed a large coffee from Royal Ground, no sugar thank you, a single girl has to watch her waist, and took the 3rd Street Muni into work. She downed the whole large coffee on the way in, grabbed another when she got off the Muni, with sugar this time. She had a craving, okay? Give a girl a break, will ya? And walked the 4 blocks to the medical examiner's office. The first thing she did, even before she set down her bag and her coffee, was call up the karyotype of Panos' murderer she'd run the night before. She stared at those results on her computer screen, not knowing what to make of it. The spectral karyotype showed 4 rows of boxes containing fuzzy lines, each a different neon color, representing the 23 paired chromosomes of the human genome. The last chromosome, the one that determines sex, was usually an XY for female or an XX for male. This one had an X, but its partner didn't look like an X or a Y. It looked like a Z. X chromosomes did indeed look like an X. 2 lines crossed up high, pinched together like a twisted balloon animal. The Y chromosome was a bit of a stretch as far as name equals appearance goes. Two short, fat chunks come together, with a little ball of material where they joined. Like the Y chromosome, calling this new construct a Z wasn't entirely accurate. Instead of cross-sections, the chromosome looked like a chain of 3 sausage links. The sharp bends at the joints made it look sort of like a Z, but when looked at in the same perspective that had called chromosomes X and Y for decades, calling the new one Z was a natural extension.
Time to use the phone a friend option.
Robyn immediately called Stone. She patiently waited for his voicemail message to finish.
I hope your day isn't filled up with shuffleboard and tiddlywinks.
Just like always, the phone immediately clicked and Dr. Stone Mason answered.
Bingo, my dear. Tiddlywinks is for a bygone era. Bingo's coming back, and in a big way. Is this about the Klinefelter's karyotype?
It's not Klinefelter's, and it's not brother and sister. It's something new.
New? What do you mean new?
I mean new, Stone. It's not an X or a Y. It's a Z.
A Z? You mean like the letter Z?
Oh, we're not in Manitoba. We're in San Francisco, Stone. It's Z here.
So you're telling me this chromosome looks like a Z?
Fine, yes, a Z. It looks like a Z. Can you come take a look?
I have to say, that's even better than bingo. I have some consulting with Genentech today. I can't get out of it. How about I get there first thing tomorrow morning?
That'd be great, Stone. I'll see you then.
North Beach, Little Italy. One of Brian's favorite places in all the world. Not that he'd seen much of the world, mind you. One of his favorite places in San Francisco, at least. Little Italy is right next to Chinatown. The change from Chinatown to Little Italy is so abrupt, so distinct, it should have gates manned by international border guards. 1 second, you're looking at packed throngs of Chinese, signs in Chinese, conversations in Chinese. The next, you're looking at calm sidewalks with cafe tables, full of people drinking espresso, old dudes letting out snippets of conversation in Italian, and every streetlight pole ringed with green, white, and orange stripes. North Beach supports 2 kinds of shops. An endless supply of food represented by restaurants, bakeries, butchers, and candy shops. Then kitsch, represented by stores full of souvenir crap and strange spots like a store that sells nothing but knives. Above those numerous food and kitsch shops sits the second layer of North Beach. Odd businesses with faded signs in the windows. Importers, exporters, olive oil merchants, tailors, and more. Mr. Biznass had one of those second-story stores, only his signs weren't faded. They blazed in garish neon with blue and red intensity. A neon eye and a neon hand, decorated with the words fortune teller. 1 flight up from Alfonso's Bakery, and for $20 a shot, Mr. Biznass would tell you your fate. If you get out spending only $20, you're either lucky or that was your last $20. That guy knows more money-snagging tricks than a gregarious pimp. Brian and Pookie walked up those stairs. The smell of incense from above mixed with the smell of pastries from below, making both smells worse for the combination. Brian hated Mr. Biznass. He'd met him twice, both times with Pookie. Pookie didn't believe in this mysticism shit, but used Biznass as a source. Biznass knew the occult in San Francisco, possibly better than anyone. I fucking hate this guy, Pooks. You're a bigot. You hate the handicapped. I don't hate the handicapped. Then why do you hate Mr. Biznass? Brian paused as they reached the stairs that led up to Biznass's door. I hate him because he speaks through a voice box and he has Tourette's. You're a bigot. You hate the handicapped. Brian shrugged. Pookie was right. What about the principal at Galileo, Solar? He have anything? I met with him for a little bit. He's putting together some records of all the Boyko kids. We can give them a good going over tomorrow. Right off the top of his head, he knew of like 10 kids with motivation to kill those Boyko assholes. Revenge? Pookie nodded. Seems like they made a lot of kids' lives pure hell, so we'll follow up with Solar tomorrow, but stop procrastinating. It's time to see Mr. Biznass. Brian sighed, then followed Pookie up the stairs. Pooks knocked. The door opened to reveal a man dressed in red robes with blue trim, and a blue turban decorated with red glass rubies. It was the outfit you might find on a 60s Hollywood Prince of India, but the face looked like it hailed from Brooklyn. Thrice-broken nose, pallid wrinkled skin, and his left eyelid hanging over the iris in a perpetual stop-action wink. Mr. Biznass put his hand to his throat, covering up a small metal hole. He spoke, his voice a mechanical monotone.
Hello, boys. How can I help the police today?
We've got a strange one, Mr. Biznass. Some symbols that don't show up in our records. We hoped you could take a look at them.
$20, bitch fucker, bitch.
Brian looked at Pookie. He didn't want to be here. He hated this guy. He didn't know if the Tourette's thing was for real or an act, and with the voice box, it was positively maddening. Pookie just stared back, his eyes saying, "Do you want to get to the bottom of this or not?" Brian looked away. "So pay the man, Brian." "What?" "Pay him, and don't forget the tip." Brian's anger flared up. Goddamn Pookie. Just like him to make any situation even more annoying. Brian handed Mr. Biznass a 20.
Come on in, cocksucking shitty.
Incense hung in the air, almost, but not quite, drowning out the smell of fresh cannolis from the bakery downstairs. Everything in the tiny space was done with red and blue. Even the blue crystal ball that sat on a table covered with a red tablecloth. Mr. Biznass sat down in a red throne-like chair, leaving 2 cheap plastic chairs for Brian and Pookie.
What have you got?
Pookie took out the photos of the bloody symbols and put them on the table. Mr. Biznass started to speak, but his face suddenly screwed up in a contortion of pain.
Cockity twat.
Take a breath, man! Take a breath! Mr. Biznass let go of the voice box and put both hands on the table. He took 3 long, slow, deep breaths. He seemed to calm down, and his face relaxed.
Tell me where you found these.
Murder scenes. 2 teenage boys, both in the same gang called Boys Company. One died 2 nights ago, one before dawn this morning.
This is not good, pussy whip shit fucker.
We couldn't find these symbols anywhere in the police records.
Then you didn't look hard enough. These symbols are for Marie's children.
Marie's children? What the hell is that, a vaudeville act?
Ass licker, no.
Brian's anger ratcheted up another notch. This Tourette's thing was bullshit. The guy just wanted to insult people to their faces and get away with it. We looked, Biznass. Honestly, there's nothing like this in the cop records.
That's impossible. Marie's children have been in San Francisco pussyfuck for 150 years. 100 people who were Marie's children were burned at the stake in 1873 at Mission Dolores.
Brian and Pookie exchanged looks. 100 people burned at the stake, and we've never heard of it? Mr. Biznass shrugged.
People don't want to know about the bad parts of history. Don't knock down 100-year-old houses, but bury the truth. Mission Dolores faggoty shit doesn't put it on the tourist pamphlet. Cock.
Okay, just tell me about Marie's children.
Occult group, rumored to be cannibals, led by a witch called Marie and her son called Firstborn. Appearances in early 1800s, responsible for multiple murders in the city. Cockity. Declared witches in late 1800s. A group called the Saviors rounded them up and burned them at the stake in 1873.
But that didn't wipe them out, I take it.
No, murders in every decade. Symbols have been seen before, usually with serial killers.
All right, so what do these symbols mean? Mr. Biznass put the index finger of each hand down, one on each picture, pointing to the slash curve at the bottom of each symbol.
This is a symbol for the bay. 2 lines represent the entrance to the ocean between the 2 peninsulas.
He pointed to the circular symbol with the 2 half circles on either side.
The circle represents the egg from which the witches were spawned.
One womb. The term from his dreams popped into Brian's mind.
The half circles used to be arms reaching out to protect the egg. Somewhere along the line they were simplified. The jagged line represents human blood. This is the symbol of Marie's children.
Why human blood? What does that mean?
Human sacrifice.
Brian leaned in. So in this case, the symbols mean what exactly?
Cockity shit bitch means Marie's children killed the boys.
So Marie's children are back? Why the hell did they go after these kids? Mr. Biznass shrugged. These old murders you talk about, were they ritualized in any way?
Story goes that they dressed up in costumes to look like monsters, to terrify victims before killing them.
Costumes? Like, say, a snake man costume, or a werewolf costume?
How the fuck should I know, fuckity bastard? Maybe they dressed up like clowns.
The voice might be a mechanical monotone, but Mr. Biznass's face was very expressive. He obviously hated Brian's questions, as much as Brian hated Mr. Biznass. You're sure this is Marie's children? Could someone be faking it?
Most certainly. Or someone thinks they are Marie's children. Marie's children are gone. The symbol hasn't been seen since 1984. Look up the Grand Park Slasher in your police files, motherfucker, bitch, motherfucker.
All right, what about the other symbol, the triangle one?
First recorded instance in 1892. Circle represents the egg, but also represents the eye of a hunter. The unfinished triangle is a symbol of protection against the hunter.
So who's the hunter?
It is not known.
Does it mean that they're the hunter, like they're hunting the boys?
No, the hunter hunts Marie's children. It is a ward of protection. The unfinished triangle means the drawer acknowledges the hunter's magic is greater than Marie's children. It is a symbol of fear. When they are exposed, they are terrified this hunter will find them.
Fear. So these murdering monsters, they've a boogeyman all their own.
Pussy slab, shitty, yes.
This is crazy. These sound like huge historical events in the city, and I've never heard of them. I've never heard of people being burned at the stake, and I've never heard of Marie's children.
Then someone doesn't want you to know.
But why?
What do I look like to you, the Oracle of Delphi, drippy cock?
Okay, Biznass, you're kind of starting to piss me off.
Up your ass, bitch.
Brian stood up. You want to get knocked out? Pookie couldn't stop a laugh as he put a hand on Brian's arm. Brian, take it easy. He's handicapped.
Yes, officer, it's beyond my control, fucking faggot. I'm sorry, please understand, fucking faggot.
Biznass apologized, but Brian could see condescension in his smiling eyes. Brian couldn't take any more. If he stayed any longer, he'd beat Biznass to death with his own blue crystal ball. Come on, Pookie, let's go. Pookie nodded. Sure, Brian, sure. Biz, my man, you've got my number if you come up with anything else, dig?
Dig that, my nizzle.
Pookie and Biznass bumped fists. Then Pookie followed Brian out of the tiny office. I hate that guy, Brian said as they went down the stairs. That's 'cause you're a bigot. You hate the handicapped. All right, so fine, so I hate the handicapped. So sick the Reverend Jackson on my ass. Oh, he'll find you, my friend. Everyone knows whiteys are all bigots. It's not so bad, Bri. We got something to work with. What? What do we have to work with? A fucking witch's coven? Why not? The boys were killed for something, and those symbols aren't exactly common knowledge. They don't even show up in the gang database. They stepped outside into the night air and the noise of the North Beach bar crowd. They don't show up, but Biznass said the symbols were associated with the Grand Park Slasher. Pookie nodded. So, that's a great place to start. I'll look that up tomorrow. But for now, I want to see the rest of the faces you've been dreaming about. Let's grab a cannoli at Victoria Pastry. I'm calling the Chooch. I thought you couldn't stand the Chooch. I can't, but he's the best at that sketch thing. Why didn't you call him earlier? It's after hours. He's going to be done for the day. Pookie smiled. Like you said, I can't stand him. Why meet him at a reasonable hour when I can pull rank and drag him out of his apartment? They walked into Victoria Pastry Company. Pookie ordered a small cannoli, then called the Chooch. Brian ordered 3 bear claws, and they sat down to wait. Well, junkies, I hope that you enjoyed episode number 6 of Nocturnal. Some interesting things starting to happen in the story. We're starting to get into some of the hard science of the story. Hope you guys dig that. I think it's going to be pretty friggin' sweet. Lots more nuttiness to come in episode 7. Now, let's talk about all the people who are signed up at scottsigler.com. First of all, you all fucking rock. Second of all, we're closing in on 2,000 people registered there. That's pretty good. I think a lot of things party time when that happens. And as I told you all, when you fill out your profile there, you are officially registered to be a corpse in one of my books, even though some of the characters aren't going to get killed. So the bad news is you've always got the outside shot at being a recurring character, which is kind of cool. I went through a lot of profiles in the random profile number generator, calling up people to see if they had pictures so I could pick their profile and include their name in the book. Like I went through like 10, 15 with no pictures. So I'm just letting you know, go to your profile at scottsigler.com. If you don't have a picture of yourself, preferably, and if you're horribly ugly with like a missing nose from back in your coke/meth days, or maybe you've got, an axe handle stuck in your head from that bizarre mining incident when you were a tourist in Utah, then I can understand you not using your own picture, and maybe you want to use some kind of graphical icon, some avatar to represent you. But remember, you guys all get to see my frightening, pallorific, skinny, cadaver-esque face all the time. I don't get to see yours. I love going to the profiles when people post the comments and seeing what you all look like. Now, yes, of course, I do make fun of you. I make fun of each and every one of you, and I find something to pick on you about, even though you're not here to defend yourself, because I'm evil. And that's what we do when you get home from evil summer camp. They give you a merit badge and how to make fun of people. I got 3 of them. I got that going for me. So get back in there if you haven't dicked around with your profile. Get some kind of picture up. Let me see what's going on. Make sure your address, your zip code, your email, your IM handles, make sure all that stuff is there. And someday, my friends, when the Sigler tanks roll across all the Sigleropolises, and all the cities will be named Sigleropolis. I think I'm going to number them like Sigleropolis 12. That'll be New York. And Sigleropolis number 4 is going to be Iowa City, or something like that. Which brings me to the topic of Iowa City, which brings me to the topic of the book tour. You guys got to go to scottsigler.com if you haven't been there already, and click on the eventful placard that's there. It's kind of a light blue. It's got a picture of the infected book cover on it. And what this is your opportunity to vote to bring me to your city as the 5th stop on the book tour. Right now, the book tour is San Francisco, Los Angeles, Seattle, New York City. That's all Crown is going to spring for right now, because we haven't done a book tour. And, to be honest, if they got to pay to fly my ass somewhere, put me up in a hotel, all that crap, that adds up. And they have to sell a whole lot of books to make up for that. Now, granted, it's all investment at this point, because they're looking 5 and 6 years down the road when I am the evil overlord of the world. And they'll be in good. They will be in good, because they helped get me started in that role. But for now, we've kind of agreed we would rather be spending our money out on different promotional things, online advertising, maybe a little print advertising, things like that, to really get the word out, as opposed to hauling my carcass around the country. So we just picked those 4 big cities, and then we're going to add a 5th, and this is where you guys come in. Go to scottsigler.com, click on the eventful placard where it says demand it or demand me or something like that. Click on that, put in your city, and let's see who comes out on top. Right now, it's a dogfight between Houston and Iowa City. Now, Chicago's also coming on strong, and the DC area has been talking a lot of big shit, but maybe not backing it up quite so much. However, those 4 are definitely in the running. But by all means, get over there, vote. If you want to get your friends to vote too, you can do that. Just try and make sure that anybody you get to vote actually is going to show up for the event. If like 350 people vote for me in Iowa City and I show up and there's 4 people there, we could see some early nukes in the Sigler campaign to take over the world. Maybe tactical, maybe only a couple megatons. Low yield, but nukes are still nukes, and they will ruin your Christmas. We will be doing a call-in episode this week. If you want to get your calls in, 206-666-4673, 206-666-GORE. I'm already backed up over 50 calls, so maybe it won't get in this week. But by all means, call in. Tell me how you're doing. Maybe there's something going on in your life you'd like to share with me. So get ready for episode 7. I hope you guys are digging Nocturnal. Get over to scottsigler.com, get your profile created, get your picture up. Maybe you could be in the book. And click on that little badge, and let's see if you can get me to come to your city and get my publisher to pay for the fucking beer. I think that's a great deal. Later. You have been listening to Nocturnal, written and performed by Scott Sigler. For more information, go to scottsigler.com. All music in this podcast provided by Uncrowned off their album Devils and Angels, available now at the iTunes Music Store.
Is it